What is up? It's Ann Erickson from the Riff, and I'm so excited to be here with Brian from I Prevail and Jade from the Riff. You guys, what's going on? I want to see your bobbleheads.
Yes. Yeah, I'm rocking Jared Goff. I gotta say, last night was probably one of the best Lions games I've witnessed in my entire life, and I have gone through a lot of Lions games.
Yeah, I would agree. Yesterday was an emotional roller coaster. I'm so glad they got that win last night. And I think the momentum going forward, like next season, like I'm already ready for it to start. Like, let's go.
You know, it's bad when I literally woke up this morning and I just watched highlights of the game because I'm sad the season's over now. But the fact that if you would have told me when we were 1-6 that we finished the season over 500, I would have done anything for that. So the fact that it actually happened is pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm already ready for the draft. I'm already like so pumped up for just next season because if we were this good in Dan Campbell's second season, I can't even imagine what next year is about to be like.
Yeah, and
Oh, definitely.
that's what everyone's been saying. And I just watching highlights and then just like on Twitter and like last night it was like hard to even go like to sleep. I was so like hyped, like laying in bed, just like scrolling through Twitter, just liking and retweeting everything. I was like, yes, this is awesome.
I know I had a hard time getting to bed as well. And it's kind of bittersweet though, because I kind of feel like we've been robbed. Like we should have made the playoffs. It's hard when you see teams who've beaten actually make the playoffs. And it's like, oh man, we should have been there. But I'm so happy.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. It definitely was pretty. It was a bummer when the Rams lost yesterday to the Seahawks, especially that game. The refs were honestly some of the worst reffing I've ever seen in a fourth quarter of a game. So it was a bummer that happened. But honestly, once they lost that game and it was kind of decided that we wouldn't make the playoffs, I actually was more hyped to kind of ruin it for Green Bay and make sure that they weren't able to get in. So it's bittersweet we didn't make the playoffs, but the fact that I think we most likely ended Aaron Rodgers' reign in Green Bay, I feel like is kind of a nice consolation prize.
Did you
Yeah,
guys notice on Sunday Night Football that every single commentator picked the Green Bay to win, the Packers? Every single one.
yeah, I saw that.
I feel like it's a story of our life, Detroit versus everybody. Just I don't think I've seen a game, honestly, that we've been on national TV that most of the reporters like have picked us. I feel like it's constantly kind of just going on Aaron Rodgers and his I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, he has a great track record, but we've beaten them now, I want to say it's 3 times in a row. So
Yeah.
we own the Packers.
We own the Packers. Yeah, I was at the bar yesterday for the end of the Rams Seattle game. And when they went for that field goal, as the Lions, right? I feel like we've been burned every possible way by a field goal attempt, right? Like we've either missed it when we needed to, or we've had like record-setting kicks go against us. And to watch it doink off the goalpost, like the whole bar went nuts. Like you would have thought the Lions just won the Super Bowl.
I mean, it feels like the last like 8 games, everything that used to go against us is now going for us. Because I remember last year when Justin Tucker kicked that like 66-yarder, hit the post, went in. You always would expect that. But then last night when Mason Crosby kicked that field goal, he hit the post and it bounced the other way. So I do feel like some of that old Lions luck that we are kind of so accustomed to really does feel like it's starting to change. Even, I mean, I'll say for the most, I mean, the refs were not great last night, but for the most part, even I feel like the refs have started to kind of respect us and whatnot. So it does feel like we're kind of turning a new leaf just in terms of, I mean, I'm 29. I've never witnessed a playoff win in my entire lifetime, which is kind of crazy to say. We actually, our photographer in the band is a huge Patriots fan. So I had to sit down with him and really tell him what it's like to be a Lions fan because he's witnessed 6 Super Bowls. So I talked to him for like an hour, just telling him basically all the crap we've had happen to us over the years. And he was bamboozled. He honestly was like, I am so sorry that you have to go through this. So I think it's kind of cool to see Detroit, starting to look like we honestly could be, one of the top teams in the NFC.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of teams that are actually probably like a little relieved that they didn't have to face us. I think this is the most fired up this team has been. I think that Dan Campbell has done such a great job. Obviously, like forming this team, right? Getting everyone to communicate. It's a team sport, right? It's not one person out there. You guys have to communicate. You have to work together. He's done a great job doing that, but he's also like made the team proud to be a Lion. And I think, Anne, you and I talked about this at the beginning of the season when we started this podcast, that some of these kids get drafted to the Lions, and you got to imagine that some of them are like sad, right? Like you get drafted by the Lions and some of them are probably like, well, that sucks, right? And I feel like this is the first time where like these players are proud to be a Detroit Lion, which is cool to see, because if the fans can feel that they feel that way, like, you know, when you go into Lambeau Field, they're going to feel that we don't support them. And it all starts with Dan Campbell. So
Yeah, and it's a long time coming. I feel like the Detroit Lions have the most loyal fans. I mean, Detroit loves football. They love the Lions. And yeah, we all have our shirts on and everything. And every season, it's always a disappointment. So it feels like kind of just wonderful, like karma that finally we're the team to beat.
I will say there was,
No, go ahead.
well, there was just some weird stuff that was going on with the Packers. I don't know if we got into their head. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers was so cocky leading up to the game that he got in the head of his own players thinking they were just going to walk all over us. But, and I can't remember the specific names of these offenders here, but the guy that walked up and touched the ball at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, like, so weird.
That was weird. The guy who shoved the trainer, which was just so classic.
The crazy thing, so I figured out last night, that was the second time that dude's done that this season. He got ejected already earlier in the season for pushing another staff member. I think it was like the Patriots or somebody he did it to. I'm like, you think you would have learned the first time you've done that? But I saw a little montage last night of just all of the things the Packers were doing. I'm like, they were kind of a dirty team last night. I think karma honestly came back to bite them a little bit, because even after we beat them, and I think it was week 8 or 9 or whatever it was, I mean, they were still, I remember Aaron Rodgers came out and was like, oh, we shouldn't lose to a team like that. I think all the dudes really went into this game kind of hyped up to the point where it was like, hey, you know, if you, you know, we're all NFL. That's what I actually heard in an interview with one of our safeties, Deshaun Elliott. He's like, you know, we're all NFL players at the end of the day. And if you are going to disrespect us and act like, you know, we're not at your level, like we're going to remember that. So I think we came into the game. A lot of people definitely thought our motivation would be like less once, you know, we technically were eliminated from the playoffs. I actually think it was more. I think they went into the game and were like, we got nothing to lose. It's the last game of the season. So there's something just poetic about the fact. I truly think that's going to end up being Aaron Rodgers' last game ever. And the coolest thing, his last, I don't know if it'll be his last game ever. I think it'll be his last game ever with the Packers. But that last throw, his last throw in a Packer uniform will be an interception to Kirby Joseph, which that's a pretty good way to end the reign of terror, if you would call it, because I feel like that's what we've had to deal with over the Favre and Rodgers era over the last 25 years essentially.
Right.
I was going to ask, do you guys think Aaron Rodgers will retire after this season? Everyone, is wondering about it.
I think it's either he retires, or I wouldn't be shocked if he got traded to a place like the Raiders or something, and just goes far away from the cold and tries to, get into a warmer climate. And his buddy Devontae Adams is on that team. So that wouldn't shock me if he got traded to a team like the Raiders or something. But whether he retires, whether he gets traded, I'd be shocked at this point if he came back to Green Bay, because I think it seemed like he has a weird relationship with that coach. And then on top of it, I think, it's been so long and they haven't done anything. They haven't won a Super Bowl in like 10 plus years. So I think for both fan base, or for the fan base and for him at this point, I think they got a split. And for the Lions, that is amazing, because you look at the Bears, you look at the Vikings, who I think are kind of frauds. I mean, it looks like the NFC North could kind of be ours for the taking over the next, I don't want to say decade, but it truly feels like things are really turning in our favor here.
Yeah, I don't know that he'll. I don't know. I would love to see Aaron Rodgers just go away. I think he is like on his like spiritual journey, and he wants to like take hallucinogenics, and apparently like that's changed his life, but clearly not for the better in his profession, which is football. I could see him going to another team, but the relationship the last like 2 or 3 years he's had with the Packers, I don't think it was this year. I think it was the year before, 2 years ago, where he didn't go to like a single practice like prior to the season starting. Like there's definitely weirdness going on. I think the fan base is starting to turn on him. Like what was it after they lost to the Lions at Ford Field, the first game of the season? Who was it? Little Wayne that like had tweeted out like I'm done with him, which I thought was hilarious. Listen, he's a franchise quarterback. He's good at the sport, but I think he's so cocky. I think everyone's just kind of done with that, right? He might pull like a Tom Brady move and, like you said, go to like a warmer climate, but I think that we've throttled him and changed.
I think we are going to be the team that when people look back, I think all the NFL. I mean, even I was just looking on Twitter last night. Like, I think the Lions have kind of turned into America's team. Even it was funny because when they did show all the people on NBC who picked last night the game, like everybody picked the Packers. And then the only person who really picked the Lions, it said America, and America voted 55% for the Lions. So I'm just going to say we're America's team. We've broken Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully for the rest of the NFL, we can just make the Packers go away for a long time. I do have to mention this, though, because this is a story that is the best part of all of this. So technically it happened last week once we beat the Bears, but Eric, who's the other vocalist in our band, and I had a really nice bet going into this season where the loser had to get a tattoo of the Lions record. So if the Lions won 8 or more games, Eric had to get a tattoo with the record. If they lost 8 or more, then I had to get a record. So you can imagine once we started 1-6, I went into that feeling like this is not looking great for me. I'm probably getting a tattoo that says like Detroit Lions 2022, like 4-13 or something. But I'll never forget it. Once we played Green Bay, that was the changing point earlier in the season. Then we just started rattling off wins against Chicago and the New York teams and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who now look like a force in the AFC. And we hit the 8-win threshold. So the cool thing for me, even though this season was so great, even on top of it, I get to throw on that Eric has to get a tattoo of their record on his body somewhere. So fun little bet.
That's a great bet. So I want to know your thoughts on Jared Goff. For me, I went into this season kind of hesitant, like a lot of people, but I am sold. I think he is our guy. I think he makes really good decisions on the field. I think he's humble, which you don't see in a quarterback a lot. And I think he's our ticket. But what do you guys think?
He's the dude. I truly, when we made the trade, I thought a lot of people didn't even really account for Goff. I feel like a lot of people just looked at it as Stafford for 2 first-round picks. And I think Brad Holmes the entire time was going like, I'm getting our starting quarterback out of this too. A lot of people forget. I mean, he was the number 1 overall pick. He had a ton of talent coming in, and he took that LA Rams team to a Super Bowl. You know, a lot of people were like, oh, it's the defense and whatnot, but he had some great seasons with them. So when he came to Detroit, I was pretty pumped up initially. And obviously last year kind of didn't go right. And I think a lot of people looked at it and were like, oh, we're ready to get rid of Goff. But he had no receivers last year for the most part outside of St. Brown. And the offensive line was banged up. He had to deal with a lot of things, and it was his first year. So now that he's had some time and really gotten to, learn the offense and get tight with the guys and get, working with the receivers for a couple of years, he is the dude to me. I have no reason to think that he can't be the quarterback for this team for the next 10 plus years. And honestly, I think Detroit, we're kind of getting that love for him that we used to have for Stafford. I think we used to be such Stafford slappies where now Goff has really earned the respect. I mean, he made a throw across his body last night that was like 50 yards that truly changed the game to Khalif Raymond. And then we got in the end zone and took the lead. I mean, he seems like someone who wants to be here, which I think is a huge thing for Detroit teams. I mean, there are a lot of guys who want to be in the big cities or the nice weather, or, just have all these things kind of given to them. And I think for him, once he got traded here, he's like, all right, this is my chance to prove that like I can be a starting quarterback in the NFL, not only a starting quarterback, but like a top 5 or a top 10 guy. So to me, obviously he just put on an amazing performance last night, but the whole season, I thought he just held his demeanor so well. So I would say I want him as the quarterback for as long as he's willing to be, honestly. And the cool thing too for us now is I don't think we need to draft a quarterback, which means we can use our 2 first-round picks on defense. And that's something that we're only going to add more young, dynamic players to this team. And then you keep your franchise quarterback. I mean, I don't think we could ask much more from the guy, honestly.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I will say that last year, and I didn't know a lot about Goff when we picked him up. It was just I kind of just bought into what everyone else was saying. He's just kind of like this kind of flop. You know, he was supposed to be great. He did some great things, but didn't win the Super Bowl in LA. And I kind of bought in, and then I watched him, and I was like, this guy, he's a jokester. You know, like we're gonna need to draft a quarterback. And after watching Hard Knocks, I was like, all right, like. I can see he's getting his confidence back, right? Like that was a big conversation we had last season, was that Goff had no confidence. He didn't have the support around him. And then coming into it, even those first 6 games that they lost, he didn't lose those games. Like that wasn't a Goff problem at the beginning of the season. I think from start to finish, he's done a complete 180 from where he was last year, and it's really cool to see. And I agree with you, Brian. Like I would love to see him for the near, the foreseeable future. Like I think he's got what it takes. I think, again, going back to Dan Campbell, that he has given the team the opportunity to support each other, to build each other up, and they need that. And when you go in and you're the QB, like you're pretty much the most important person on the field. And if you don't feel like you're supported, how do you expect someone to perform, right?
1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's our guy. We all agree. So I've noticed a lot of people in the media as well, writing kind of op-eds about, all right, I've changed my mind. Jared Goff is the man. So it's nice to see that we all are noticing. I mean, it was an incredible season for him. The past half of the season, he is performing within like the top 5 of all the NFL quarterbacks. So it doesn't get any better than that.
I think too, it just just to give shout outs again to the GM, Brad Holmes. I mean, a lot of people really looked at him as just a big old contract, and, he'd be kind of a filler until we got the next rookie quarterback we brought in. So the fact that I truly think he is kind of filled Stafford's shoes for this city. I think a lot of people, when we initially traded for him, it was a lot of people just did not.
I was those people.
I mean, it was one of those things that obviously you wanted to have blind faith, but in the back of all of our heads, I think we kind of realized, like, well, why do the Rams want to get rid of him so quickly? Like, why does, this first overall pick already kind of lost his mojo? So the fact that he's got it back, the cool thing too, going into this year, now going into year 3, it just feels like the sky is the limit with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then you got the running backs between I'd like to bring everybody back between Swift and Jamal Williams, and then my buddy Justin Jackson. I think the wide receiver core with Jameson Williams now is going to get a whole offseason under his belt, which he never got to experience going into this year. And then you have an offensive line that just gets another year to get more reps together, and they're already so good. So it's going to be hard for me to think this team can't. I mean, that's the cool thing. We're going into next year with expectations. Actually, I think the expectation for this team will be to make the playoffs. And if you would have told me that coming into this year, that we'd finish 9-8, barely miss the playoffs, and now looking into next year can be one of those teams that kind of says like, hey, we're here to take over the NFC. I would have taken it 10 out of 10 times. So it's quite the season. It's quite the season to look back on, and one that I think a lot of us, I mean, there was so much joy over this last 8-week stretch. I mean, honestly, as a Lions fan and a diehard one who watches every single game, whether it was the 0-16 season or seasons where we've just kind of been mediocre, this one really did feel different just from even the beginning of the year too. I know it was tough where we obviously started really rough 1-6, but essentially all those games were super competitive. It was just the fact that our defense really couldn't hold anybody. So now 2023/24 just seems like the sky's the limit, and who knows? I don't want to be calling anything crazy, but I think the NFC North, we can absolutely be the champions, and that would be the first time in my lifetime, which would just be awesome.
Definitely. And I'm curious, what do you guys think about the Super Bowl? Do you have any favorites to go all the way?
Ooh.
Well, so my default second team, I've got Philly roots. My dad's from
Okay.
Philadelphia. So my secondary team is always, the
Good
Eagles.
pick.
Yeah, and they've been a really strong team. I mean, they throttled us last year, and then we came out
Mhm.
in the first game. We actually almost won that one. And they were a tough team to beat all season long. So
They're
I got to
great.
go with.
And Darius Slay. I wouldn't mind seeing him win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, so that's who I'm going with.
For me, it's tough. I feel like this year is kind of wide open where like any team could win. One that I actually think would be super cool. I'm just rooting for the story more than anything would be the San Francisco 49ers, just due to the fact that if they really do win with Brock Purdy, who was drafted Mr. Irrelevant, he was the last pick overall in the draft, and he won a Super Bowl. I mean, I know the defense is stacked and they obviously have a really good roster, but I mean, that's straight out of a movie that the last pick in the draft would all of the quarterbacks ahead of him would get injured and he would end up making,
Right.
his team end up go to the Super Bowl and win it.
Well, didn't he didn't in his like first game, wasn't that against the Buccaneers and Tom Brady, and they
Yeah.
won? Yeah, which was cool to see. Like those sort of things, man. Like that's the magic of the
Imagine
sport.
that for that kid. I mean, hell, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he was in high school and now he's literally, and then he also had to deal with the fact that, wow, I was the last pick in the draft. I'm
Right.
legitimately named Mr. Irrelevant, and he made himself relevant. That is for a fact.
That's like the saddest nickname ever.
But
I like all
but
those picks. For me,
yeah,
I mean, I'm with you, Jade. I'm going for the Eagles. I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts. He's one of I used to say he was my favorite quarterback, but I don't know. Jared Goff might be my favorite now. But I think he's very inspirational. I'm always inspired when I see him interviewed and see him on the field and stuff. So I'm going for the Eagles all the way. I know that they lost a few games, but he was hurt, so he's back now.
no, I think that's a good pick. It'd be a shocker to me if honestly they didn't at least make it to the NFC Championship game because that offense is so explosive. Like you said too, I've watched interviews with him and little clips where they'll go back in his life. He seems like a guy you really can root for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any parting words for the Lions going into next season? What are your wishes for them?
It's so sad that the season's over now. I feel like I
I
can't
know.
even feel like I don't even want to just because I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to wake up next Sunday and have Lions football. Maybe it'll be a little less stressful actually to just watch some other teams for a little bit. Because I will say, as much as I love my Lions, they definitely give you heart attacks some Sundays. But I don't know. I would just say that I mean Jared Goff right here. I think he's the man. I think he's the one to truly be able to kind of lead us in the future and be a good dude who possibly could get us to a Super Bowl. And I just hope that going into this next year, we really focus on the defense, get some guys in the draft, get some secondary help. I'd love a couple cornerbacks with our first round picks and honestly anything to beef up the coaching staff. If Dan sees, the cool thing about the coaching staff, we just love to bring in ex players. So who knows? Maybe bring in Kelvin Johnson with the receivers or something and see if we can get him back because I feel like the organization and him have had some rough goings over the last few years. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm just so grateful we got to witness kind of this last 8 or 10 week stretch and get to watch some good Lions football and go into a off season where I think all of us are super excited. And I haven't felt this way in quite a while. So I think the sky's the limit for what this team can be. And the cool thing too now is with the season going so well, because there were so many rumblings in the beginning that, is Dan Campbell even going to last the entire season? But now that they've finished so great, I mean, I think he's the coach to be the guy. I think he's the one who can lead us to a Super Bowl. And I have all the faith in the world of him and just so excited to kind of see what this next year will hold.
Yeah, I gotta say, going into next season, let's go. Like, I feel like waking up this morning, this entire city, and the sun's out today. We haven't seen the sun in 9 days, and now all of a sudden there's not a cloud in the sky. This whole city feels electric. And I think that, like you said, Brian, let's make some good moves in the draft. Let's keep the momentum going. And I think it would be impossible for them to not, right? Like, there's no way they're going to go into next season and not feel exactly, the game one, right, of the next season, there's no way they don't feel the exact way that every single one of us feels today, right? Like they're going to carry that. I think that they're so proud, and that's like, let's go. What was it? What did Jamal Williams, if I'm like projecting like thoughts for next season, whatever Jamal Williams said in his Sunday Night Football intro, like we'll send that, because that seemed to
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Hilarious. And then what did he say at the end, his interview post game, where he was getting emotional and he was like,
that was touching.
these tears, like, don't take these tears for weakness, like we're all dogs, or whatever he said.
Well, he also,
I love
like,
that. Oh my gosh.
He said that he heard everybody kind of pick the Packers and stuff pregame too. So yeah, it just seems like this team has so many good emotional leaders, and the team does feel like a family, which even, we talk about rock bands a lot, and I think a lot of bands have to have that dynamic where if you're not a family, you're not going to be at your best. And I think the fact that the Lions truly do feel like every player loves each other, and the coaching staff loves the players, and it's so much bigger than football. So it does feel like we got really lucky with the coaching staff and really lucky with the GM we hired, and I can't wait for next year. Honestly, I wish I had a time machine just to press a button and take me to like September 10th next year.
Right.
I know. I feel the same way. I can't wait. And I do feel like our team is so special. We just have something very unique right now that I can't think of many other NFL teams, who have that very special bond. My hope for next season is that we bring back the guys who are up for contract, bring back our stars and keep the secondary coaching staff, make sure that everyone is set in place, because it's going so well right now. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I'm totally behind that. I just want to see us go in there and perform like we have the second half of the season, and the sky's the limit.